Welcome to Sales Training for Podcasters, the podcast designed to better your sales process. We'll be sharing tools, tips, and techniques, whether you love sales or hate sales. If you've got a product or service to sell and a podcast, you've come to the right place. Now, here's your hosts, podcast strategists, Doug Sandler and JJ Flizanes.
So JJ, you know that I've talked about this guy forever. You know, it's one of those guys that I will travel down to San Diego just so I can just see him take the trash out. So I want to welcome Joe Fier. He is the better half of, or maybe the worser half of the Matt and Joe pair of the Hustle and Flowchart podcast. So Joe, welcome to Sales Training for Podcasters, man. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Doug and JJ.
I know he introduced you like I don't know who you are. I'm like,
no, I wasn't introducing Joe to you. I was introducing Joe to, you know, Joe, when you have those therapy sessions that you do on your show, you know those. Oh, yeah. It's like every once in a while, I really need to do like what is it called? Like a podcast enema, something like that. Yeah. What would that be? Well,
I don't know what that would be. Yeah, purging of sorts. I don't know, but clearing. Those therapy sessions. It's like our time to just kind of get real, you know, and I think it's healthy.
Let's get real when it comes to selling and sales. And I just want to, before we kind of get underway and like tell our community exactly how you've best situated yourself for your community. What's your relationship with selling? I mean, do you feel like, are you comfortable with the idea of selling? Is sales a 4-letter word to you? What do you think about it?
I guess I approach it as I think most of us would, is approach it with our personalities and try to lean into that more than trying to construct some sales, strategies around what other people say you should do, if that makes sense. Because I think I struggled a lot with trying to get really good at phone sales. You know, like I'm going to get on the phone, I'm going to be calm, I'm going to follow the script, and I suck at that. I get like off. I'm not a script guy anyway. I just get too chatty, and I know the sales thing is like, let the other person talk. It's like, I lead into my personality, and I have a very, I think, a giving approach, kind of like the go-giver, if you've read that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm blanking on
Bob Berg.
Bob Berg. Thank you. Gosh, I actually have had him on the show a couple of times. He's a great guest.
Cool.
It's cool. I mean, he leads with, he sells from a relationship selling, just sell by just ingratiating yourself with your potential customer or just building a really good relationship with your customer. I mean, but you've created I know you don't feel like it's an empire, but from those of us that are looking down or looking up at you in the heavens and thinking, you created a 7-figure business. You had to sell some products in order to do it. So how have you done it, and why hasn't there been like, it seems like no matter what you do, nothing holds you back. Like you don't get held back like mentally in your own shit.
I think we put on a good facade on that respect. The sales part does happen every day, but I feel like I'm constantly trying to better myself in many ways. And I think you and I were sharing one of those in that sometimes it's tough to let go of the pieces of your business. And we were talking about like email communication. I mean, that's like, if you look at my inbox right now, you'd be like, well, you'd probably be in good company. I'd probably be in good company with you. But it's just like bursting at the seams. So, but it's because I take a very personal approach to everything I do. And I want to give my time where I feel like people deserve it. And I think that's really where my selling comes through, and Matt's as well, my co-host and partner in business. We're marketers first. So I think we understand, like how things can connect, how meeting someone online or even offline, we can connect that into, okay, well, now we can follow up with them in so many different ways where it doesn't feel salesy or pushy. And we can lead with a lot of value, content, podcasts, different types of ads that actually help give value first. So it's always give. And then there's an ask. There's a light ask, and maybe it goes a little more scarcity or urgent. If we layer on some marketing, tactics around the messaging of things, like put deadlines on stuff. That's like really how our sales work. It's just cultivating relationships, like you said. if it wasn't for like tight relationships, I don't think we'd be where we're at, with our peers on the like you guys and other people we bring on our show, but also with the audience that sees us as buddies. Like we kind of come across as friends that are just trying to help. That's kind of our MO with selling.
I love that, Joe. You guys are, your sales style is you're the buddy, like you're buddies, and you're just making a recommendation. And you're probably the least sales-like people that are the most successful in this space that I know, which is why I wanted to have you, and we wanted to have you on Sales Training for Podcasters, because sales training doesn't have to be, and I love what you said early on about like you lead with who you are, and you customize how you go about helping other people and selling through what is comfortable for you and your personality versus trying to fit in a script or fit in a system that isn't really in alignment with who you are, doesn't feel right for whatever reason. And sometimes you can break down those reasons, and sometimes it's a psychological thing for a lot of people. But what I love about what you and Matt have been able to accomplish is that you're so successful in literally honoring, this is what we're comfortable with, this is what we're good at, and the written word and all of our online marketing strategies do the work for us. So when we talk to you, when we get on our podcast, we don't have to do anything because we know that it's all going to be taken care of by this automated system and this content we're providing you, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, and that's where I think the difference is for us with when it comes to podcasting, is we are marketers first. Online marketing has been our specialty for almost 15 years. It's kind of crazy, and in a whole bunch of respects, not just with podcasting, but we just see podcasting as another type of content that you put out into the world, another way you can capture attention, give a ton of value, and then grow an audience. But it shouldn't stop at podcasting. I think that's the big thing is, people aren't maybe thinking about how they can further that relationship into other modalities, online, even offline, maybe throw in some personalized videos like I'll sometimes send. I know Doug's seen a lot of mine, just communicating back and forth. And I think it's just, it's figuring out how to show up in a lot of places online, always do the giving first, and being consistent. Consistency, the lack of consistency is what killed all of our previous podcasts. And, our first one, I think, was back in 2010 was our very first podcast. I just wish we stuck with it. We just didn't know what we were doing. We were just kind of throwing stuff out there. But the Hustle and Flowchart podcast, our current show, has been running for almost 4 years, and we've never missed a release date. Now it's 2 times a week, an hour each for each episode at least. So it's a lot of content we're cranking, but it's consistency, I think, is what's really paid off for us now with what we're doing.
So one of the things that I really noticed about you and Matt. Now, Matt tends to be the quieter of the two of you, Joe. And I
sometimes
think you guys, well, maybe with you, he might be a little bit more out front. It's kind of like when me and Strickland are together. Strick is always the guy that, he plays the straight guy, and I play the guy that's always, cracking the jokes or not, whatever, cracking jokes. Do people crack jokes anymore?
I don't know. How do you do that?
Try
How does that sound? Yeah.
The funny guy. But one of the things I noticed about you when we first met at New Media Summit was exactly what JJ, was alluding to, or maybe she said it directly, is that you're just a nice guy. It's just like people just want to hang out with you because you don't feel like, and I think this is genuine. I don't think there is anything behind the scenes. There's just not an agenda. It's like your agenda is, well, how can I serve you best? If I can serve you best, and then, hey, if I have something that you want to, that could actually support your business or help you, then by all means, feel free to take advantage of it. And I love your disconnection to, and disconnect in a good way, I love your disconnection to the necessity to put something into their hands in exchange for money. It's like, it doesn't even feel like that's a part of the process for you. It just happens to be the byproduct of a good relationship when you have somebody that needs something that you could help support them with. So how do most people, and you've seen a ton of people in online marketing and a ton of people probably selling well and selling poorly. What do you think, where is that? How does that disconnection in a good way, or not being connected to having to make that sale, where does that come from for you? Any idea?
It's a good question because, yeah, I've seen, I know a ton of very successful marketers personally. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, the Rolodex and what we've seen. And, of course, the people that have just come across our podcast, we get to hear a lot of stories and strategies. And, a lot of them we connect with, but some of them are just like, like that's not for us. That doesn't fit. And it kind of, I think we have a really good filter for that now. But the whole disconnect thing, I think that's good realization, because there's something in Matt and I where we've been trained by sales mentors. We paid for training. We've gone to sales training in person, and like all these different strategies that require, or quote unquote, require you to get on a phone call or meet with someone and follow a script, do all these things. But I don't know, it just didn't feel right. And I think for a long time, Matt and I were trying to force, a square peg in a round hole, that whole thing. And it wasn't until really getting this podcast going, I would say probably a year into it, getting the confidence and knowing like, okay, hold on, we could lean into our personalities here, because it seems like people are attracted to that. And if we just recommend things that we really love, things that we use, people's products and services that we enjoy or we have gotten some kind of value out of, let's just shout them out. And let's see what happens. And let's use our marketing knowledge to support where we shout things out and create some extra content that maybe dives a little deeper into those things that we're supporting. And, those are things through like YouTube videos and screen capture videos, blog posts that kind of help further that conversation or that recommendation. And I'm talking about, affiliate products and products that we would sell ourselves. This is how we sell it. It's not like, hey, go to my webinar, and on that webinar, you only have, a day to watch this thing. We're going to hit you with 10 emails in 2 days. Like, no. And it works for some people, but it just doesn't feel right to us. So I think, I've always been like turned off by the long sales process or the long sales page. And even though I know they work and I've written them and I've used them, there's just, I don't know. I feel like you're leaving a lot on the table if you're just hinging on like this one way to sell or this one thing you're selling. We'd rather create kind of like a suite of options for our folks, because everyone's going to be needing different things at different times. So we might as well just support folks the best we can and try to customize, the recommendations if we can through things like email automations and Facebook ads, and sometimes us just shouting things out or sending a personalized video if it fits. So yeah, it's interesting, but I guess we're carving out our own little, way of doing business online, because it seems to come up a lot. They're like, you guys are doing some different stuff.
So tell me, Joe, because I think part of the issue is a lot of times people have a tough time like finding their groove. And it sounds like you went through I don't want to say the stumble part, but you went through the things that didn't work for you, and you finally figured out what your groove was, which was, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to build trust, and we're going to, people, it's not just like an empty, I'm going to build trust, so here comes my trusting sentence here. So what advice would you have for somebody when it comes to just trying to figure out like, okay, what is your groove? What is the thing that you should be doing to kind of generate sales for your business? Like, what advice would you give to somebody that's kind of new at this?
I would really understand. I'd go back to the personality thing and really get to know what lights you up. And if you have a partner or a co-host, figure out what lights them up and figure out how to work together in that. And just lean into being you. I think for the longest time, we were trying to model a lot of other people, mainly marketers or sales folks out there. And for a long time, even podcasters, we're going to be the next Joe Rogan. And we'll still jokingly, get a lot of, we'll throw it out there and, we like him for inspiration, but like, that's not us. So we figured out, well, we're just not sales guys, and we don't feel like that's what we like to, we don't enjoy doing it. We're not like, sales guys will be like, oh, or gals will be like, well, we're meat eaters. Let's go get the sale. We're going to go on the hunt. And it's like, like, I'm kind of just not, I don't have that drive in me to do that, but I do have a drive to give. I'm curious. So is Matt. So we share a lot of, even though our personalities are different, our interests and the ways that we like to consume and communicate with people are very similar. And so maybe it's a communication style. Figure out how you best like to do that. How do you like to interact with people? How do you feel comfortable? And I feel like you're 80% further down the road if you can identify the things that you're good at already, or the things and the things you're just most interested in, that you want to go deeper down the rabbit hole and refine and improve. Because we can always get better, but you might as well start, with the qualities that you already possess that you've probably been walking around life with unknowingly, able to apply that to, generating income online in this case.
Yeah. One of the things I love about it is that you guys, you and Matt, have such great complementing, traits, good assets, things that are your strengths are not necessarily Matt's, and vice versa. Or, you make it easy for him because you do this, and he makes it easy for you because he does that. And he geeks out on technology, and I can tell that he does, kind of the way Strickland geeks out on technology, a different kind of technology, but it's the same idea. It's just that his whole thing is, I seem to think that Matt's deal is like everything is like a jigsaw puzzle for him, and he loves to solve puzzles. And yours is like, hey, I like relationships, and I got to figure out the best way to further create relationships with my community. And that's where your strength is.
I think you nailed it right on the head perfectly, because that's partially why, if you go to like my inbox right now and why we were talking about it's kind of tough for me to just let go and let someone else manage the inbox or sift through these emails, because these emails are all people I know for the most part, except for all the podcast pitches coming at me, which we all get. But even for those, like I want to, all of these emails, I'm looking exactly what you said. I'm looking for opportunities or ways to give some value to that person, to further the conversation or deepen that relationship, because they're here for a reason. I mean, not every email is equal, of course, not even, every intention is equal in it's easy to get caught up in other people's agendas. So I think that's a big thing I've learned over the years, is to say no to more, but at the same time, like really think clearly about how can this opportunity or this new affiliate promotion or whatever it might be, the speaking engagement, how does that line up with our goals? And for a long time, we didn't really have a clearly defined, North Star for the business, and how the podcast relates to the business, and how the speaking opportunity relates to the podcast and the business. It's like we didn't really connect the dots as well until pretty recently, when we're like, oh, okay, everything kind of starts with the podcast, because that's our relationship builder. And, of course, there's relationships built outside of the podcast. So that's why it lands in my inbox or phone calls. So then, Matt sees it as a jigsaw puzzle on how to smartly connect all that stuff, where, him and I will brainstorm, he connects the dots, and I'm over here basically looking at the relationships as okay, cool. So how does this serve this? How does it serve them? How does it serve our audience? It's an interesting web that we're constantly juggling in our minds, but I think that's what lights us up. That's why it's so fun. If it was just a singular business doing the same thing every day, talking the same, we'd just probably get bored. So that's why we challenge ourselves to just do some crazy shit and go out there. Hopefully I can cuss on there.
Of course.
Yes. But yeah, you nailed it, man. I mean, you need a good dynamic like that in a partnership. And if you don't have a partner, then figure out some folks to help you out and, shore up anything that you feel like is missing to help you along.
Yeah.
I almost feel like for you guys, because correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys started back in content marketing before the podcast, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So you already had a tool, your focus was content marketing. How can I sell stuff? How can I sell shit without actually having to sell shit? Right. I almost feel like, for a lot of people who we want to listen to the show, there's the duality of those that are really good in sales, and they're looking for the sales tips and the how-tos and the how to get better and the sales training. And there's the people who are like, I hate sales. What do you mean I have to sell? And I don't like the way that feels. I don't want to follow some cookie cutter program. And you're, again, that example of doing the exact opposite energetically of what people expect when they hear, they're selling. Yeah, but they're doing it through relationship building and content marketing and using so many different touch points that are sometimes automated, very customized, but they're not doing what you think of a typical sales person is doing. And I just wanted to go back in time for a minute and talk about before you got into content marketing, or maybe around the same time, because you did say you had gone through sales trainings, all different kinds of trainings. What was your relationship to the idea of selling when you started even just content marketing?
Yeah, with content marketing, so we started blogging, and this is before we quit our day jobs and all that, but we had different blogs in like a health niche. We had a finance kind of niche blog and all sorts of, we were just dabbling. And it actually ironically started with affiliate marketing, which is how our business is basically the bulk of our revenue comes from that now, affiliate marketing. But on the content side of stuff, we realized, I think we quickly studied, or we realized the power of consistency and just putting stuff out there, like publishing content. And based off of that, and this was from a lot of folks we were reading about at the time, the Tim Ferrisses of the world, and all these other folks that were bloggers back then, we would figure out how to publish content around a topic that people were already searching for. And then we would go to, back then it was forums, like different forums in the space that, whatever that blog was located in. We would go there and start talking with people and start giving value and start answering questions. And one of the strategies we used to use is, forum marketing. You always have your links in your signature, your bio. So the more help you give in these forums, the more opportunity your link's going to show to the people in that thread. So that was really how we started getting traction to our content, to the blogs, is just going to forums that were related and answering questions. So it was rooted in, creating value and then helping the people and just trying to connect the two together. And eventually, we weren't paying for ads at the time. We didn't really know much about that. We were just doing a ton of grunt work. So I don't know if that just like laid the foundation and we just kept building on top of that and refining what we were doing. But yeah, it was all based off of that. And we realized, oh, this works. This is getting us money. Back then, it was maybe just hundreds a month, but it was enough to give us enough confidence. We're like, okay, I think we can scale this if we actually learned how to grow an email list. And then after we learned that, then things exponentially grew because now we could tap that email list for, giving them the next blog post we created or video that we would shoot. And then attaching some kind of way for them to buy something from us within that email as well. So I think that's where it created the motivation for us. And then over time, it just kept evolving.
So it's almost like content marketing is reverse engineering selling.
Right.
Like in a person-to-person situation or in like on a stage situation. Would that be accurate? Like I want to learn how to sell. I want to use this tool that I have that I've learned can really help me do things from my desk. I don't have to go anywhere. I can talk to people, but I can reach a lot more people a lot faster if I learn how to use this. Would that be accurate?
Yeah. I would say it is our mechanism is content online helps us sell. Yeah, for sure. But you have to have an overall system and plan to make sure the dots are connected so you could actually make that sale and not just, just give and never receive anything from it.
What about like a pitch? So talk about your, relationship to pitching, like a sale to either your audience or to a prospective buyer that's verbal and not necessarily written.
Before Joe answers that, I just want to throw this in because I have seen Matt and Joe, what they would consider is their pitch. I think you videoed something. You were somewhere where you were on stage. There was a guy that introduced you. It was you and Matt on stage. And literally, you just had everybody laughing. And I think that's, I mean, I could be completely wrong. And certainly feel free to share what your pitch is. But I think your pitch is just you just building that relationship, even in mass with an audience, just kind of like it is with your podcast. And it's just by you just telling what genuinely is just you. And it's like, hey, and this is what we do. And this is how we do it. And yeah, there's some complicated stuff in here. And that's where Matt comes in. And there's some that's where I come in. It's like teaching people how to do, affiliate marketing is just, that was your pitch. And it was so refreshing to see, hey, there's hope for me. I don't actually, I don't have any bad relationship with sales or selling or anything. I mean, I'm fine with calling it whatever. We had just a interview with Michael Neely and, he was calling it, or I was calling it prospecting. It's like, closing. And I'm like, oh no, those are probably horrible words for some people. But
well,
that's what I think your pitch is. Am I wrong?
I think you're right, or at least you're pretty close to right, because I don't. And JJ, I wrote down pitch on my notes here. I'm like, what is my pitch? But I think but Doug, from an outside perspective, I think that helps me a lot, because you're right. Every time we ever go on stage or on the podcast or any kind of content that we feel like we're in our flow, we're joking around. We're just showing how, like we like to disarm people. I feel like we want to from the very beginning show them, hey, we're just a couple of normal dudes that like to have fun. We're here to show you some cool stuff we learned because we happen to be very curious and be connected to a lot of interesting people that are doing cool stuff. So we just want to share it with you. And we just happen to bring a lot of that stuff together, and we create, with us interviewing nearly 400 people, or probably over this span of time, like we've consumed enough stuff, but we've put it together in this system that works for us. And it could be different for you, but you know what? We're going to share you what works for us and all the tools associated with it. We love these things. If we don't love them, we're not going to recommend them. So if you feel like any of these are your fit, let us know, or click this button, or whatever it might be, and then that kind of sends them down the rabbit hole to the next phase. But yeah, I would say somewhere around there, JJ, is kind of the pitch, quote unquote pitch, even though I don't really think of it as that. It's just a conversation, and we're just trying to further them into the next step. I would say that's really what's going on in our minds.
And it didn't really change when you guys were selling your own stuff. So for some people, selling affiliate products is easier because it's not theirs. And I know it happens more with women than with men, but sometimes there's an attachment, there's a personalization, there's a confidence or lack of, or, making it personalized when it comes to selling something, a coaching package or a product that you've created. And again, I think that's more women than men. But is it the same, do you think, that when you were offering your own stuff versus affiliate stuff?
I honestly think it's way easier to sell affiliate stuff than our own stuff. And if you look at our website and in our offers, you're not really going to see much of our own other than ways to join our email list. And in that case, it's really easy for us. We just say, hey, this is free. It's really cool. You should have it. Give us your email address. In exchange, we'll send you this book. When it's selling, when I feel like it's selling other people's stuff, we are disconnected in a way. I think it's a benefit, actually, if you start to think of like, okay, if you're selling someone else's stuff, you can really come at it as a customer that just really loves that thing, and you become more of an evangelist rather than a salesperson. And it allows you to just get really excited.
Yeah.
And I feel like, there's no ego in that now, and people are like, oh, he's just saying that because it's his own shit. And it's like, no. Like I genuinely use this and I love it. And here's a blog post or a YouTube video that even explains it further if outside the podcast, for instance. And I mean, customer service isn't on us. So, we don't have this like burden in our mind that this thing's going to maybe create more work for us, because that's a thing. It's like, there was someone on our podcast, and this might actually help people. I wish I can remember his name, but basically, I don't want to just start randomly naming people. The point is he's like, what's interesting with sales is most of us actually hurt the sale we prevent it from happening because we subconsciously know we have to deliver that thing, however that thing is going to be delivered, phone calls, even if it's an automated thing. We know we're going to have to do support and fulfill, all that stuff that happens after the sale. So a lot of us, if we have that in mind, we're like, okay, well, here's the next step after this. I really want to get this sale, but at the same time, holy crap, it's going to create a lot of work for me. That doesn't really happen in affiliate marketing. Like that just goes away. And it's because I know that's the case for us. Like when we're selling consulting stuff and things that we have to personally like hop on phone calls for, or even, run a mastermind, because we've done all of these things and I enjoy it. But like, I think that is what was holding me up subconsciously, and definitely with Matt as well, is that kind of thing, is like, I got to do more work after I close this sale. Whereas in the affiliate marketing, you still do work, of course, but you're not fulfilling, you're not doing customer service unless you choose to. And we will sometimes, but like that's, again, it's giving value, and it's usually directing them even to another thing that fits them along their path, if there's a fit for them. So yeah, I think it's interesting to examine the subconscious stuff that's happening that might be actually holding you back from pitching anything, but let alone your own stuff. It could be a little tougher unless you get past that block.
Well, I want to address something that I think people are kind of asking themselves, because, we have friends or podcasters that we know that have launched shows that are selling other people's stuff. But in order to be successful selling other people's stuff, you have to have enough of your own audience to do that. Is there a tipping point that you guys started out with? I mean, I know you had a blog to start, then you had a podcast. Did you merge the blogging community into podcast listeners? And at what point would you think is either a number or a time frame or a way to gauge that you have an audience now ready to make some serious money off of selling other people's stuff?
I would say, so the way that we did it is, from the very beginning, we just started a blog, and just started consistently writing and then just spreading that around to different forums online, ways that people would discover it. I don't think anything would change now. Now with say a new podcast or a new, way of selling, it's just like the modalities or the platforms have changed. So the way that we did is we took our email list. I would say always grow an email list, no matter what you're doing. If you have a podcast and you don't have an email list, please grow an email list. Just sign up for any email autoresponder service out there. We use ActiveCampaign, but you can use MailChimp. I think there's a free tier, but it's worth it, because now you have an audience you can go back to. You can't just go back to a podcast audience and start, sending them an email to a specific person, or a message. Email allows you to do that. So what we did is we took our email list, and when we, with the Hustle and Flowchart podcast, we actually, it folded in from Matt's previous show that had some momentum, and we basically combined our efforts, made the Hustle and Flowchart podcast, and then we said, hey, email list, we have a new podcast now, and we're going to let you know what we're talking about and when it goes live. That's how we got that ball moving. But I don't think there's any one time when someone should start promoting an affiliate offer or anything. It's kind of whenever you feel like you have something to give value to. It's kind of tough because everybody's situation is different. So if you're selling your own products or services, you can be an affiliate marketer. And I would just say, think of the problems that your audience has, either your prospects, Doug, or people who have already purchased from you. And you don't have to solve that problem. Figure out some affiliate arrangement. It could be another course, service, tool that solves that problem. And you could just start recommending things lightly in your emails, or, as a sponsor, quote unquote, sponsor on your podcast. You can replace a sponsor with testing out an affiliate offer. But, within that ad spot, talk about the cool stuff that you think that this would do for your listeners or your email, readers, and put your own perspective on it. And if there's a cool deal that you can give them, or a cool quick tip to get started and make their money back once they join really quickly, kind of ROI quickly, we like to focus on that. But I would say just start recommending things that solve problems that your audience has that you might not necessarily be solving yourself, because you don't want to leave them hanging. It's better to be the connector rather than just kind of just being like, I can't really help them with that, so I'm just going to ignore it, because you're leaving money on the table. And I think you build a lot more trust when you become that connector.
Oh, agreed. And I do love that point of view of, if I'm thinking of what you need that isn't mine and recommending it, I am earning your trust, especially if you use it and you like it and you're helped by it. Because then now, if I have my own offer, you're more likely to trust me. Instead of waiting around to figure out what your own product is, sell other people's stuff. But I think the key thing here, a lot of podcasters are just starting out, or ones that aren't doing very well selling or converting people to do things or take action. Some of them are new, and they didn't come into this like you did with an email list. And so let's take the scenario of someone who's just started their podcast and they don't have an email list. Would you recommend, and how would you recommend, if that's the case, how somebody could build an email list either simultaneous? Let's say if they only have 100 listeners or 100 downloads per episode or per month or something, right? It's going to be slow going to build an email list on the podcast. Mm-hmm. Is there other ways you would recommend someone build an email list to help that?
Yeah. There's so many creative ways you could do it. So I would say one of the probably easiest ways that any of us can do is go to a Facebook group, a relevant Facebook group that has your audience, and maybe you have a relationship with that Facebook group owner, and just do a deal with them. Start a conversation and start asking, hey, can I put this piece of content in your group and give some value there? And if I do this consistently and give value, can I ask them to get this free gift from me if they choose to? You can just put blog posts. So a way that we initially started building our email list is creating blog posts around some topic or thing that's helpful. And after that content piece, if they got the value, we give them an option to go a little further with us. And that's like a content upgrade is kind of what that's called. So you can ask for an email address in exchange for, say, a cheat sheet around that topic. Now, if you go to these groups and you start just giving a bunch of cool content away, but you know that each one of those content pieces have a content upgrade or a way for someone to join your email list, that's one way to kind of replicate what Matt and I did a long time ago with forum marketing. All you're doing is just finding the audience, and I'm using, Facebook groups for this reference. There's so many ways. You can go to LinkedIn groups, you can go to Quora.com and start searching for topics where your people might be hanging out looking for solutions. Well, as long as you're showing up and giving some kind of value add, it could be your podcast episode too, it could be a blog post, YouTube video, and just know that you should have a way for them to join your email list within that piece of content that you're posting online. No matter where the thing lives, there should be an ability for you to join or get those people capturing in your email system. So other than that, I mean, there's so many ways. If you want to invest money for ads, there's a lot. We even had someone on our podcast recently that just outlined the perfect way to create a Facebook ad campaign. Super simple. Anyone can do it. Yes, it costs a little bit of money, but you might as well, if you want to kickstart it with, blood, sweat, and tears, it's obviously not going to cost you as much money to create all the content. It will cost you a lot of time. If you want to shorten that time, you just got to invest in some paid traffic. So Facebook ads are great for that. Google, YouTube ads, all those things. Still, same thing applies. Put value in front of them and give them an option to join your email list.
It's great advice. And I'm thinking, I've heard Quora so many times, and I went on once and I think I started to look around, but I looked at it as, wow, how much time do I have to spend here? Like looking into things and reading things. And at that point, I mean, especially now, I mean, if you're just starting out and, you don't have a budget and time is what you have, then cool. Yeah. But as you start to scale and grow, time isn't what you have, and doing something like that feels like not the best leverage of time and space. So, and even guesting on other people's podcasts, guesting on other people's blogs and things like that.
Should be guesting too. Yeah. I mean, that's one I didn't even think about for some reason, but that actually is a great list builder for us right now. So, I can go around our guesting strategy if that's helpful.
Sure.
Yeah. And quickly on Quora, you can actually do a lot with a little. That's how I funded a whole business. I was getting a bunch of leads for an animation company. Basically, the trick there, and this is a side tangent, I'll get to the podcast guesting. On Quora, it's all about getting there quick, like to the post. And if you answer that question, whatever it might be, especially a question if they're like looking for an action, like a buy, or like, hey, give me examples of animated videos. This is what I used to sell. So, and what are the pricing? So I would just go straight there and I'd get all the leads I ever needed from Quora, just posting organically, not investing any money. I wouldn't say that's a great strategy for the long term, but it sure as hell worked. So if you use Quora effectively, you can actually get a good amount of leads from it and attention and not too much time. Podcast guesting on the other side, we go on shows, Matt and I, probably individually once per week. So that's quite a bit of shows. And again, consistency is what we're after there. But at the end of each show, we always have a call to action. So this is probably the biggest just flop that most people do is they spend, 30 minutes, an hour on someone else's podcast, but then they don't have anything prepared to allow those listeners to take a next step with them. Because, there's so many reasons why someone might be attached to maybe it's your personality, maybe it's the thing you said, maybe there's a specific nugget that you said is going to be in this like cheat sheet book thing, whatever, for free, that's going to get them to take an action with you. That's where we have multiple freebies, if you want to say. The freebie term is kind of a weird thing to say, but the freebies, like you can have any around topics that you discuss on these podcasts. So for us, we have one around podcasting, traffic generation, and affiliate marketing. So we know that most of the conversations we have on podcasts are around those topics. So depending on how the conversation goes, we'll then just say, okay, well, if the show guest or a host is open to it, we'll say, we're going to recommend one of these books that we actually normally sell for whatever amount of money. It has all of this stuff in there, and this is how it relates to what we just talked about in this podcast. If you want it, here's a custom URL to get that. We usually customize the URL to the show that we're on, along with the page too. We customize a little bit of text on there to kind of match the title of the show and the host. And that now is our lead gen for, every time we go on a podcast, now we're going to get some leads that are extremely relevant to that topic we talked about. And those leads we've actually tracked, you have a much higher LTV, so they just spend way more money with us than folks that will find us, say, naturally on Facebook, through an ad or something like that. The guesting, it's just the quality of folks, I feel like, are just that much more attached to your personality and what you're trying to teach them or give them. And if you give them an opportunity to join on, your email list from the back of that episode, you're going to win. So I would say everyone should be doing that if you have the time.
And it's kind of like, you were saying, hey, what's the best type of service for you to share with your community is the service of somebody else. And that's exactly what's happening when you're going on other people's podcasts. They're you in that case. They're sharing your services, and you've already built immediate credibility with that community, because that host whose community is following them is hearing from you, who now that podcast host trusts as well. So that's really good advice. Podcast guesting, where's the best place to get your community? From other people's communities that are already listening to podcasts, of course.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. You don't have to build it yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have to build it yourself 100%. Talk to the experienced podcaster that's out there. There's somebody that's kind of been doing this for a long time. And I remember, this was like my wake up moment. I just can completely remember this like it was yesterday. Steve Olsher came on my show. And at that point, I think we just ticked over the 1 million download mark. And he was really excited for me because the numbers were really good. And he kind of understands the numbers and what they relate to behind the scenes. And for those in our community that don't know who Steve is, he created this thing called New Media Summit. But in our case, it was like, he came on the show and he's like, oh, that's cool. 1 million downloads. How much money are you making? And I'm like, you can make money from this show? Wait a minute, you can make money from podcast? And I really, at that point, I didn't even realize that there was money in podcasting. Mm. So can you dispel that myth to the experienced podcaster that's out there? Is there money? Can you make it? And what's a dollar amount that somebody could even be shooting for? I know that's a hard question to answer, but I'll just throw that one at you too.
Yeah. Well, the elephant in the room is, yes, you can 100% make money with podcasting, and many people are, but most people are not. I know it's an interesting thing to say, but I think we surveyed the podcasters on our email list. We have about 1,000 of them at the time of that survey, and I believe it's been a while. I think it was 90% said they are not making a single dollar from their podcasting efforts. And we're just like, wait, hold on, this is an issue. This is not good. Right. And so that most people default to be like, okay, well, I can either make money from sponsorships or Patreon. It's like, those are my two options. And either option, I need to have a boatload of downloads to make any money at all. That's substantial. Because what CPMs, you might know better than I, are what, $25 to $30 per 1,000 downloads. And for ads, for sponsored spots.
Yeah, it's like, and most podcasts don't even have, 1,000 listeners. So they're like, right, make 20 or $25 for sponsorship and advertising. I'm like, no freaking way. I'm like on to the next thing then.
Exactly. Like you spent the whole month to get a nice bottle of wine or something, or a decent bottle of wine. So it's like, let's think about this a little bit. So the way that we look at it is so if you go down the sponsor route, I'll just start there. Start with kind of like what people have in their minds already is, you can reframe your sponsorships to be a flat rate and get off of that CPM model. I think that is the number one recommendation that we have there. This isn't our number one, podcast driver for revenue, but it sure as heck was the very first direct path that we took.
Oh yeah,
And
and you get your show in the black, and all of a sudden now you're playing. You're making $25,000 or $30,000 from your show from advertising because you're not following CPM, which is totally. Maybe we stole this from you, or maybe we borrowed it from somebody else. But I'm like, I am not making $15 for this episode because I have 12 listeners at the time or whatever it was. I'm like, so we just started $495. That was our price, and we included a bunch of other stuff as a part of it too. But I was not willing to undersell myself for the amount of time that it was going to take. And then the worry of having a sponsor on an episode as well. I'm like, no. So yeah, that was same thing. We turned up the gain on that and forget CPM.
Yeah. And I think everyone can do this. If you think about what are the things that you can offer a sponsor that you have control of? And it doesn't necessarily need to be something you own, but it could just be something that you have the ability to, you have access to. So it could be, in our case, it's our email list. There's ways to get in front of, or get a sponsor in front of the folks on our email list. That is in the form of our weekly newsletters. We'll actually, we'll list the sponsor in that email. Sometimes we'll even send a dedicated email depending on the level of sponsorship. And that goes to, X number of thousands of people. So you can kind of quantify this for them on your sponsorship doc. Your Facebook groups, you can monetize that and say you can post to, the group, however cadence or frequency you want. We also have a physical newsletter that we send monthly to our paying members. So we have inserts inside of those. That's part of our sponsorship package. Of course, the episode itself, the podcast itself, we have an option to sponsor the front of the podcast or the end. And, those are different tiers. So just thinking about things of like, what are the buckets? Like where is attention at within your business? If you have attention on just wherever, just think about how you can now control that attention and show this sponsor in front of those folks. That's one way to kind of break out of that CPM model and start doing a flat rate thing. So that's a direct way. Another thing on the podcast. So our model is on the podcast, we don't sell anything directly. We might recommend some things, but those are just kind of mentions. Our main call to action, which is, you should always identify what your main call to action is, but it should somehow grow your email list, and it could even grow a community in tandem. So the thing we're doing now is we shout out flowchartgroup.com is our new call to action on our podcast. And what that does is it's a redirect that takes folks to our Facebook group. But within when they're applying to be in the group, we have them answer a handful of questions. And one of them is essentially like, hey, if you give us your email address, we're going to give you the cheat sheets from our 4 latest episodes that we took notes on. These episodes are our action guides. You'll get them if you just give us your email address. So not only do you get the community and get connected with us and listeners and guests, but you also get these cheat sheets, and in exchange, we're getting their email address. So after that, that's where they have the ability to purchase the membership from us, which is $15 a month or $59 a year. And there's different things that they get for each one of those. But that's how we're pretty much immediately monetizing our audience. And if they don't buy, right there on step 1, got them on the email list. So we're always let them know when a new podcast goes live or new episode. And within all the other emails, we're going to give a ton of value. We're going to send them stuff that's related. And we're always giving them an option to purchase or just take another step further with us. There's a very simple strategy that everyone can use in their email marketing. It's called the super signature by Dean Jackson is who came up with this. And essentially super signature is essentially you write in a full email. It could be a pure content email with no call to action, no link to anything else other than in your sign off. So you say like, hey, okay, great email. Have a great day, Doug is your sign off. And then you're like, hey, if you want to go a little further with me, here's a few options that you can take. First option is typically the easiest thing that they can do. Second is kind of mid-grade. And then the third is kind of like this is a deep dive. So for example, first option, so the number 1 in that super signature could just be, hey, did you check out this cheat sheet that we just put out? Maybe it's another freebie if we're trying to segment our list, or maybe it's like a super tiny, $10 offer or something we're putting out there. That can trigger a whole nother thing, but that's kind of like the first thing. The second thing is, maybe there's a mid-grade tier product or something that, it takes a little bit more commitment. And then the third one is like, hey, do you want to deep dive, get on a call with me for consulting or an audit? And these are, make whatever examples you want, but essentially want to get the easiest, moderate and then hard options. Don't want to frame it that way, but just in your mind, be like, okay, people are always going to take one of these, depending on where they're at or what their needs are. And that is probably been the easiest way for us to make sales from just giving, is that super signature content. Our concept from Dean Jackson, we use it in almost every one of our emails now. And it's such a simple thing to
I love finding out that something I have done is a thing, right? Like my first event, if you know Yvonne Larson, she's one of our podcast mastermind members, and she's a podcaster. And Yvonne she'd come to my very first event and she said, "Oh, are you following the such and such system?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? How you build connection between people first, and you do this and do that." I'm like, "No, I just did the event the way I thought the event should be done. I wasn't really following anybody's system except my own brain." And so that was the first time that had happened. And the fact that you're mentioning the super signature, which I haven't heard about, believe it or not, and I'm doing it. And when people do some of my lead gens from my website, the email they get after they get their score, if it's a quiz or something, is literally this. Like the first thing is the podcast. Like, here's the free thing, go to the podcast. The next thing is, if you already listened to the podcast, join our Inner Circle membership, which is $9.99 a month. And then the third thing is, if you need immediate attention right now and you want to have a session or two, here's for that. So I think I'm like, oh, I'm already doing that. Cool. I'm glad that works. And I would encourage everybody else to do it also, because that would be a really great way, again, like you said, to get people engaged and then to take one of the three things. Because for me, if you're not coming from my podcast onto my email, but you're finding me on YouTube or through social media, or you've searched something, I do want a backdoor to come back to the podcast, because like you, that's where everything happens for me.
That's right. Yeah, and you actually gave way better examples than I even did, because it's like, and actually the podcast is the perfect first thing in that super signature. It doesn't cost any money, but it might be just reminding them to subscribe to the show, or to share the show, or leave a review. All those little things you can kind of rotate, which is going to help you grow the show, of course. And then further down the line, you just go slightly a little bit more commitment. That's all the super signature is. And like, it's crazy, because we used to kind of sweat over the things that we would promote, and then, write an email about it, or some kind of content piece that has to sell this thing perfectly. It's like, well, or we could just tell folks, hey, an episode just went live. Here's all the cool stuff we chatted about. Cool. Have a great day. Oh, by the way, here's our super signature that gives you some options to go a little deeper with us. So it's kind of like a wild card you can use anywhere.
Yeah, I love it. So let's talk about yours. Let's talk about how people want to get more from you guys. Obviously, Hustle and Flowchart podcast would be the first way. Yes?
Yes. Thank you.
Any other offers we want to make to the people who are listening in terms of your free offerings that you have?
So if you go to hustleandflowchart.com/podsales, I think that's a good one, right? So hustleandflowchart.com/podsales, you'll get that. It's an affiliate marketing playbook that I don't know how many pages it's like 50 plus pages of just crazy amount of tactics and strategies from us, but also other folks that have been on our podcast, basically all condensed into one thing for you. So flip to any page and you're going to get some strategies that will help you make some affiliate sales with any type of content you create, but pair it up to podcasting, it'll work great too.
I would just say whatever Joe does, follow him. Follow him.
Hustle and Flowchart.
For the way that I take out my trash, because just a reference to that.
So hustleandflowchart.com/pod-sales. The link will be in the show notes. Joe, we love you. We think you're great. We love learning from you. We love podcasting with you. And tell Matt we said hi, and thanks for coming on the show.
I love you guys too. Thanks for helping. I'm happy I can help kickstart the show for you guys too. It's fun.
Excellent. Thanks so much. All right, everyone. We'll see you back here next week.
Thanks for listening to Sales Training for Podcasters. To get additional information and to access more amazing content that will boost your sales game, visit salestrainingforpodcasters.com. Hey, do us a favor. Rate and review our show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Again, thanks for listening.